Under the baobab, the Hadza way of waiting. Before the hunt. You find yourself beneath the spreading arms of a baobab tree, its hollow trunk wide enough to shelter an entire family. The bark is smooth and worn from generations of hands brushing against it. The Hadza, an indigenous group living around Lake Eyasi in northern Tanzania, have rested here for generations. You settle in, and the soundscape stills. There are birds calling in the distance, the quiet rustle of dry grass, and the low hum of insects. The wind has that particular dusty sharpness found only in the East African dry season. Before the hunt begins, there is, always, waiting. This is not an active kind of waiting, the way you might wait for a bus or an appointment. It's a layered, patient pause, a shared stillness shaped by environment and tradition. This section is about that waiting, and how it shaped the lives, health, and survival strategies of the Hadza. The rhythm of the day. Among the Hadza, time does not tick forward in anxious seconds. It is felt through shadow and hunger, not through the mechanical parsing of hours. They rise with the sun, their routines largely dictated by the position of the light. This is not some romanticized natural rhythm, it is simply the practical response to a landscape that gives nothing freely and takes back what it can. In the early morning, while the sun still hangs low and shadows stretch long, the elders often sit under the baobab, talking in low voices. They discuss where they saw honeybees last, which trees have ripened, and what the wind might mean. You might expect a rush to gather food, but the Hadza know better. Many animals are still bedding down. The heat hasn't yet coaxed the bees into action, and besides, energy must be conserved. The waiting, then, is part of the work. Tools of patient living. A young man beside you checks his bow. It's not elaborate. A single piece of carved wood, shaped patiently with fire and knife. The arrows are tipped with a black poison, made from the desert rose plant, adenium, mixed and fermented with ash and saliva. Each arrow is prepared for a specific kind of animal, guinea fowl, gazelle, baboon. A misused arrow is wasted time, and here, wasted time is the same as wasted calories. Nearby, a woman arranges a small hide bag. Inside it are pieces of baobab pulp, some dried berries, and tools for gathering tubers, digging sticks made from heavy wood, fire hardened at the tip. The Hadza don't stockpile. Food storage encourages rot, pests, and conflict. Instead, they rely on the knowledge of what is in season, where it is growing, and how much energy it takes to get it. This, too, is part of the waiting, the constant assessment of the landscape's memory. Food, fire, and fat. Contrary to popular images of endless hunting, most Hadza calories traditionally came from plants. Tubers dug with effort from hard soil, berries crushed into pulp and spit back into communal bowls, and the rich, tart fruit of the baobab. The tree you sit under isn't just a shade, it's a food source, a water source, a gathering point, a history. The fruit has high vitamin C, calcium, and fiber, nutrients that help make up for a lean meat diet. Even the chalky seeds, ground into a meal, add bulk to otherwise meager rations. You learn quickly, every movement has a caloric cost. If you burn more energy chasing a meal than you earn from eating it, you fail. So, they wait. For the right time. The right bird call. The right angle of shadow. Even fire is calculated. Fires are built small and quick. Smoke means you're too visible. Sparks mean danger. Ash means you've burned too long. You come to understand that invisibility and patience are crucial for survival here, not speed or aggression, communication without pressure. The Hadza are non-coercive in almost every sense. Adults do not command children. Leaders, if the term even applies, do not issue orders. There is discussion. There is observation. But rarely is there direction. If someone doesn't want to hunt today, they simply don't. If a forager feels the berries are too few, they turn back. In the stillness of this system, cooperation arises naturally. Over time, the social fabric is quietly reinforced, not through hierarchy but by mutual reliance and communal rhythm. There are no fixed roles. Women may hunt, men may dig tubers, but tasks are shared based on interest and ability. You may find this confusing if you're used to rigid timetables. But here, structure lives in adaptability. The Hadza are fluid. And in that fluidity lies a kind of strength rarely recognized in formal histories. Unwritten knowledge. Around mid-morning, someone begins a song. It's not formal or ceremonial. It's quiet, half-sung under the breath. It's about a successful honey find, and it includes strange chirps that mimic the honey-guide bird. The song passes information. It teaches without preaching. You learn that certain trees are good for climbing if your feet are dry. That baboons leave behind useful tools if you know where to look. That certain ants sting more after the rain. All this knowledge, passed from elder to child, sibling to sibling, accumulates not in books but in habits, humor, and hushed conversation. Every detail matters. The tilt of a footprint. The bitter aftertaste of a root. The distant click of stone on stone. And yet, the knowledge is not hoarded. A child may know how to follow bees by age 7. A teenager may already have learned how to treat a snakebite with dried bark and patient chewing. The group survives because everyone can become a teacher. And so they wait, and in waiting, they teach, remember, and pass along what cannot be rushed. Not a vanishing world. Western narratives often describe groups like the Hadza as disappearing. But such phrasing ignores the ways in which they persist. While outside pressures, from land encroachment to missionary schools, have impacted Hadza life, many still resist the call of sedentarism. They adapt quietly, selectively. They wait for governments to forget. They re-emerge after surveys are done. They build temporary alliances. They preserve language in lullabies. This waiting isn't passive. It's strategic. It reminds you that survival is not always dramatic. It often looks like patience, like sitting under a tree for hours before moving. It looks like doing nothing, when that nothing is everything. It is the deliberate act of not exhausting your resources, even when the world urges urgency. You sit back under the baobab and think, what does it mean to be patient in a world that wants speed? To know so much and yet need so little? To value waiting, not as absence, but as presence? You wonder. He's silent hunt. The sun now leans higher in the sky, thinning the shadows beneath the baobab and shifting the mood. A stillness settles, not of rest but of preparation. The Hadza hunters rise, not in haste, but with the quiet coordination that comes from years of doing the same thing in the same place. There are no shouted plans or maps scratched in the dirt. Only the nod, the glance, the half gesture that means, now. Today, a small hunting group moves eastward. You follow in silence. This section follows them, step by careful step, into the thorn scrub bushland. It is a world of small clues and slow decisions. There is no spectacle here, no galloping chase. But every detail holds weight, and every silence is filled with listening. The landscape is memory. The land may look empty to unfamiliar eyes, scattered acacias, dusty trails, a dry riverbed or two, but to the Hadza, it is densely populated with information. A patch of disturbed soil tells the story of a warthog's midnight rummaging. A single overturned stone hints at lizard activity. A barely visible print reveals the soft hoof of a dik-dik. The hunters carry this memory in their bodies. They remember which trail a porcupine followed 3 days ago. They remember that the last time someone saw guinea fowl here, it was mid-dry season and the acacia pods were just beginning to fall. There is a Hadza word, ipim, used for sacred men's rituals and nighttime hunting. But ipim is also the name of a spirit, and it conveys a certain reverence for the bush itself. You walk under this gaze. You move not just through space, but through memory. Tools that whisper. A bow. A quiver. Maybe a knife. There is nothing extravagant in the hunter's kit. The bow is slightly curved, carved from conifera or olive wood, smoothed with ash. The arrows differ in size and tip, some carved for birds, others for larger game. Poison tips are used with care, marked, known, and never confused. The poison-making process is itself a waiting game. Adenium sap is gathered, dried, mixed with crushed roots and ash, and left to ferment. Too soon, and it's ineffective. Too late, and it turns brittle. But the final product can paralyze a gazelle within minutes. It works by slowing the heart. Quietly. Some Hadza still carry old metal arrowheads, scraps repurposed from colonial fencing or old tins, but they're not considered better, only different. A good arrow is the one you can make again. You begin to see how simplicity isn't a lack. It's a decision. The Hadza do not need better tools. They need tools that can be remade, repaired, and remembered. Hunting without choreography. The group splits naturally, two veering toward a creek bed, another circling west. No signals are exchanged. Each person knows their range. You are struck by the silence, not only of voices, but of assumptions. No one insists on leading. No one checks a GPS. There is no plan B because plan A is always in flux. Every movement considers wind direction, animal behavior, and vegetation cover. You stop often. Sometimes for minutes at a time. Once, one hunter simply stands still and squints at the ground. You later realize he's watching a shadow pattern change. It reveals the slow passage of a tortoise. Not a target, but a sign. There's an old Hadza saying, "The loudest man eats last." It's partly a joke, but mostly a truth. Loudness scares prey. It wastes breath. It disrupts the learned flow of the land. Even laughter, common and hearty in the village, goes quiet in the bush. This is a culture of listening. Women as hunters. Though often underrepresented in early ethnographies, Hadza women do sometimes hunt, particularly for small game and birds. On other days, they dig tubers, collect fruit, or track honey with the aid of the greater honey guide bird. Today, however, a woman accompanies the group, her arrows shorter, her gait steady. She veers off after a bird call and returns with a quail in hand, hit clean through the wing. It is a quiet success. She nods, places it in a woven pouch, and moves on. Roles here are functional, not fixed. Anyone who proves useful is welcome. Strength is measured by endurance and observation, not dominance or bulk. Even the children learn through exposure. A 5-year-old may trail a hunt, not to participate, but to see, to listen, to learn how not to be noticed. An unexpected interruption. A sound. Not animal, not wind. It is mechanical, faint but present. A distant engine? Perhaps a tourist vehicle, far across the valley. The hunters pause. One tilts his head, smiles faintly, and makes a low clicking sound with his tongue. Not annoyance. Recognition. The world outside occasionally enters. This is part of the modern Hadza experience. Tourists come. Researchers come. Government trucks come. And then, they leave. The land remains. Still, the sound shifts the mood. The hunters grow more cautious. You realize, even quiet cultures must make noise to survive in a world that doesn't value silence. Return without drama. After hours of moving, tracking, listening, the group gathers again. One carries a small dik-dik, shot earlier and now tied with fiber cord. Another has a guinea fowl. There is no celebration, no high fives, no boasting. The mood is satisfied, but calm. They will eat tonight. Others will benefit. Bones will be cracked for marrow, skins cleaned and dried. Nothing will be wasted. The meat will not be salted or stored. It will be consumed quickly, shared widely, and forgotten when gone. What matters is the next opportunity. What matters is balance, never taking too much, never announcing too loudly, never assuming the land will always provide. You walk back beneath a softening sun. The baobab comes into view again, this time casting long afternoon shadows. You sit. Someone begins preparing the meat with a small obsidian shard. Someone else tends to a fire. You think about the hunt. Not a chase. Not a conquest. A dialogue. One that favors stillness over speed, listening over talking. And you wonder. What happens when waiting becomes survival, and silence becomes the only reliable path forward? Night under the stars. You are back under the baobab. The hunt is over. The meat has been cooked, not over a roaring blaze, but over a flickering, controlled fire that crackles just enough to remind you it's there. The smell is subtle, earthy. Nothing is burned. Nothing is rushed. The bones, cleaned of meat, are cracked for their marrow with rocks worn smooth by decades of use. The tools of the day are set aside. Now comes the third part of Hadza life, the night. This section explores how the Hadza experience nighttime, not as a break from the day, but as a continuation of its rhythm. The stars above become stories, the shadows become comfort, and the pauses in speech stretch longer, until even language begins to rest. The shared fire. There are few things more central to Hadza life than the evening fire. Not for warmth, it rarely gets that cold. Not even for light, most work is done by dusk. But for being. The fire is a center around which people gather, eat, sing, argue, and fall silent. There is no formal dinner time. No assigned seating. People drift in and out. Some chew slowly, others not at all. A child falls asleep against a parent's hip. An elder pokes at the embers, not to adjust them, but just to feel their warmth. Stories begin to emerge, not with a flourish, but with a word, a glance, a fragment. Someone mentions a time when baboons raided the drying rack. Another recalls a hunt where a porcupine led 3 men into a dry creek bed and vanished. Laughter is soft and frequent. There is no need to perform. The fire is the audience. You find yourself listening. You do not understand every word, but the tone carries a rhythm older than language. There is nothing rehearsed here. No one is the main character. Everyone has a voice. Or not. Silence is allowed. The night watchers. Among the Hadza, there are no formal guards. But some individuals naturally stay up later. They do not patrol. They do not carry weapons. They listen. Hyenas call from the ridge. A distant whoop, followed by a cackling laugh. A cough from the bush might be a leopard, or nothing at all. But the Hadza do not panic. They are not sealed behind doors. Their safety lies in attentiveness, not in architecture. Sometimes, the fire is banked low, and people sleep in clusters, feet near the embers. Other nights, hammocks are slung between trees, or hides are spread across the ground. The stars are always present. The Hadza do not fear the night. They know its rules. One man, older, shifts on his mat and begins humming. The tune has no words. Or perhaps it does, and they've been forgotten. The melody loops, soft and repetitive. A lullaby not for children, but for time itself. Dreams and spirits. Hadza spirituality is fluid. There are no temples, no scriptures. The sacred is woven into daily life, into honey, into death, into stars. The Epim spirits, associated with men's rights, are said to move more freely at night. But they do not bring terror. They bring memory. The Hadza do not dream in linear plots. Or rather, they do not treat dreams that way. A vision of an elephant might mean illness, or direction, or nothing. It depends on who dreams it, and when, and how they feel when they wake. Meaning is flexible. Stories are revised. Interpretations shift like smoke. You notice that no one asks what another person dreamed. If the dream is meant to be shared, it will be. If not, it remains folded in the mind, like a hide set aside for tanning. In a world that prizes proof and permanence, this kind of spiritual quiet feels unfamiliar. Here, what matters isn't belief, but attention. The unwritten archive. All around you, knowledge moves without paper. The Hadza do not write things down. Their history is not recorded in scrolls, monuments, or contracts. But it is no less preserved. There is a story, told slowly, about a man who once found a leopard cub near a termite mound. He fed it for 3 days, then watched as its mother returned and led it away. The details vary. Sometimes the cub was sick. Sometimes the man was old. But the story endures. Not for its accuracy, but for its meaning. Even danger has mothers. Another tale describes a woman who followed bees to honey during a drought. She shared it with no one. But when her son fell ill, the honey was used to heal him. Was it greed or foresight? No one agrees. That's the point. The Hadza archive is made of ambiguity, lessons wrapped in repetition, truth layered in pause. These are not myths. They are not fables. They are the slow sediment of memory, packed into quiet moments, and carried by voice alone. A world in balance. Everything here operates in balance: food and hunger, effort and rest, sound and silence. Even the Hadza relationship with the land is governed by a kind of loose but strict ethic. Take what you need. Leave the rest. Do not hunt with excess. Do not store what will rot. Do not build fences. Their survival doesn't come from domination, but from refusal. Refusal to settle. Refusal to accumulate. Refusal to rush. This balance has been tested. Farmland edges closer every year. Conservation groups sometimes restrict hunting areas in the name of protection. Well-meaning development programs offer rice or schooling, not realizing what's left behind when barter becomes currency, or when children are taught to sit indoors. And yet, the Hadza endure. Not unchanged, but still themselves. Adapting. Waiting. Outlasting. You look up at the stars. The same constellations watched by generations before you. Orion rising. The Southern Cross pivoting above the horizon. Someone near you whispers the Hadza name for one of them. You do not catch it. That's okay. Some knowledge is not meant to be collected. Only witnessed. One final thought. Before you drift into sleep, you consider what you've seen: the waiting before the hunt, the silence during it, and the shared fire after. Nothing flashy. Nothing loud. But every action was full of intention. You wonder. In a world obsessed with speed, what does it mean that one of the oldest surviving human cultures still thrives by waiting?